Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is about to reveal its final DLC character, which will likely mean the end of Smash development for quite some time, and in the rafters, we've got a lot of new contenders coming in. But one of the most anticipated by far is Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, which is, at time of upload, just about to be released. Now, the first handful of people are starting to get the chance to play it early, and thankfully, they generally seem to be saying it's really fun, which has me optimistic, but I'm not fully optimistic. There are some things about Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl that concern me a bit, so remember Family Guy?
I'm going to do something I call the compliment sandwich, where I say something good, then talk about where you need improvement, and then end with something good.
That's pretty much what we're doing here. I'm gonna go over some of the stuff that I'm most impressed by about the game before release, as well as some of the things that I'm most concerned about moving forward. Highlight number one for me, a pretty obvious one, the roster. That is clearly the reason the game has attracted the level of attention that it has. I mean, I'm thinking about getting it twice, once on PC for general gameplay and content creation, and then again on my Switch because my girlfriend wants to play it in the living room. She has not expressed similar interest in Rivals of Aether or Rushdown Revolt, because while those games may have great gameplay, they don't have SpongeBob and Aang, and it's hard to overstate just how important a factor that is. And I've got to say, looking through the roster, Ludosity delivered. There are, at this point, still a few major omissions. We haven't seen Timmy Turner or Jimmy Neutron. Those are kind of the biggest standout, like, where are they moments. The team has stated that there were a few with some international licensing issues behind them, so that may be referring to those characters, and that may mean we're getting them later, but in any case, generally speaking, it's a pretty impressive roster. At time of upload, we have 3 Avatar characters, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I've got to say, it's a little weird that we don't have all 4 of the Turtles, but 2 of them plus April is a great start, and there's a strong possibility they'll be added down the line. Cat Dog, Danny Phantom, 3 SpongeBob reps, and I'm really holding out hope for Mr. Krabs and Squidward down the line, but very solid base. Helga, Powdered Toast Man, Reptar, and then some more that I know essentially nothing about, both due to the fact that I was much more of a YTV kid than a Nickelodeon kid growing up, and also I'm a boomer, so I have not actually watched Nickelodeon at all in a very long time. The selection spills over into the stages too. They look very vibrant, very colorful, very well laid out, and there are some dedicated competitive stages too, which is really interesting. You can always ask for more characters. Of course, All-Star Brawl doesn't hold up to Ultimate's just titanic roster or even some other platform fighters that have been around for longer, but as a starting point, this is really solid. However, while the game has a lot of really cool characters, the actual production value put into those characters is a bit questionable sometimes. This game is being developed by Ludosity, who were likely chosen because they previously developed Slap City, which is a game that honestly had really fun gameplay and was a great value for your money, but it also looked like this. Now, if your game's mascot is Ultra Fishbungeon 3000, okay, the super cheap looking visuals are almost part of the charm, and they really did lean into it even on like the menus and stuff like that. I'm obviously not saying that All-Star Brawl looks as bad as Slap City did, but visuals were clearly not Ludosity's highest strength or at least interest as a studio, and I've got to say some of that does carry over to this new game. The art style they've gone with is pretty decent, and it gives a good cohesion to all of the characters, which I really like, but it still looks kind of cheap. And it's also not totally consistent across all characters. Some of them look noticeably worse than others. I think Cora and Patrick here look noticeably better than, say, Danny Phantom does in this clip. I honestly just think his model looks kind of off in comparison. SpongeBob looks pretty decent. So far, I've mostly just been talking about their in-game models, but the animations don't look that great either in a lot of cases. This leg sweep here, I don't think that looks very good. There's really not all that much sense of startup or cooldown on it. It just kind of abruptly starts and finishes. Whereas some of these sword moves here, I think look way better. This kick too, like that just does not look good. It has almost no startup animation on it. It just kind of jerks into it. I think my single biggest gripe with the lack of production values here, though, is that none of the characters are voice acted, and it makes the fights feel so much more lifeless than something like Smash does. Now, to be clear, this is probably not the studio's fault. They were likely given a pretty modest budget for this game, and voice acting for the entire roster would be fairly expensive, and during this particular time period, a little bit difficult to coordinate everything too. But bottom line, however many excuses you want to toss out, all that actually matters to the end consumer is results, and the result of these fights is that they feel kind of lifeless. The goofier animations, the weirder looking character models, some of that kind of stuff can be passed off more as personal artistic choice, but the lack of voice acting, That just sucks, and I have not heard a single opinion from anyone who says anything other than it sucks. I know some people are probably going to say, well, at the end of the day, it's all about gameplay, and I just fundamentally don't really think that's true. Production value matters a lot and is the first thing you notice far before you've got any kind of handle over the gameplay, to the degree that a video game can completely screw itself over sometimes if its launch trailer doesn't look perfect. Am I saying that's necessarily going to happen here? No. Again, these are wacky Nickelodeon characters. I think people's tolerances in general are a lot higher. But I gotta say, even taking those into account, I'm still kind of disappointed with how the game looks and sounds. Not disappointed at all, though, to hear that the game is going to be launching with rollback netcode, and that's amazing at any time, but particularly during this online-heavy era that we're in right now. Delay-based netcode, which, by the way, is what Smash uses, delays all inputs on your screen until they've also reached your opponent's screen and both consoles know exactly what the other player is doing. This starts feeling bad immediately, and if your connection is anything other than pristine, you start feeling like your characters are punching through soup. Rollback netcode does not have to do this, or at least anywhere near as much. On your screen, you still move pretty much normally, and on your opponent's screen, they're still moving pretty much normally, and then on each other's screens, their opponents are also mostly moving normally, and then there are just little corrections made along the way to line things back up. In a year or two, I don't think this will be an impressive announcement anymore. I'd say over the past like half year to a year, enough games have come out with rollback to kind of establish, no, if you're going to be making a modern fighting game, you put rollback netcode in it. But at the moment, it's still a relatively new thing, and I'm super excited to be playing with it. From what I understand, at least in one-on-one fights, all platforms are going to support rollback netcode. In some platforms, which they haven't specified yet, but absolutely means the Switch at least, larger player counts are going to default to delay-based netcode. That kind of sucks, but rollback is much harder to program and much more resource-intensive, so understandable. Bringing things back down again, character movesets in this game, I've got to say, a little underwhelming, especially considering how imaginative some of the Slap City roster is. I'm showing off the up tilts for a couple different characters right now, and as you can see, they all pretty much do very, very similar things to each other. The animation between them may switch up a little bit, but what they actually do is pretty universal. They're pretty much all just stubby combo launchers. Same applies to, say, their light up airs. A lot of them do really similar stuff. A lot of the time, even the animation looks pretty similar between them. It follows very similar arcs. Tons of spikes, too, and it means that this kind of up-down, up-down, up-down juggle game is a really similar combo tree that a lot of the roster seems to follow to some degree. Also not super impressed by how much some of the animations on these characters are recycled between their aerial and grounded versions. Like, here's the jab, and here's the neutral air. It makes the characters' kits feel very samey. Again, here's the up tilt swiping wind kick, and the up air, aerial swiping wind kick, and a ton of characters have this kind of regular version slash aerial version of the same move. I'm aware that a lot of that was probably budgetary and time constraints. That's not necessarily how the team wanted to have to design these characters, and the fact that you do get light and heavy versions of aerials helps somewhat in this regard, but bottom line, again, I can only see results. What's less of a factor within these constraints is how much the game seems to take from Smash as well, and I get it, Smash has a massive roster, it's been around for a long time, tons of platform fighter characters take Smash moves and do their own things with it, this is nothing new, but even so, the roster is not that big and the characters' move pools are not that big, and we're still seeing a decent amount of overlap. This here is pretty much just straight up Yoshi's down B, and depending on your mindset, you might consider this to be like a little bit of a cheeky nod to the fact that they're both dinosaurs, but for me, it doesn't sit quite right. On the other hand, here is, for what is all intents and purposes, essentially Jigglypuff's Rest, but the thing is, I like this one a lot more. Is that some kind of objective thing? No, it's subjective preference, and your opinion will likely differ than mine on which particular Smash overlap moves you like versus which ones you don't. But overall, I would still say the trend is far too much towards a lot of them. Also not a huge fan of the fact that characters only have 3 special moves in this game, essentially 2 if you take away a lot of pretty similar up special recovery moves. And out of the neutral specials and down specials that are left, a lot of them are these kind of just like pretty strong single hit melee kind of moves. Same with this one here, like I grew up watching Danny Phantom. He has an incredible array of powers in the show, and the best you could come up with for one of his 3 precious special moves is a big surrounding hit. Also just a few character designs in general that, I don't know, I find a little bit underwhelming. Like Aang, obviously a super anticipated character, but he literally uses an element other than wind for 1 attack in his kit. This one here, this spinning staff move, where if you're specifically at over 100%, you turn into the avatar state and do this new special version of the move instead with all the elements. And the idea of a comeback mechanic based around turning into the avatar state, that's super cool. But as far as what they've showcased, he only does that for one move, and for the rest of it, he's just this kind of ninja wind user guy. I don't necessarily think that's how a lot of people would have pictured Aang playing, and that would make sense to some degree if, say, you were planning to have 4 characters from Avatar, one for each of the elements as they're doing with Toph here, and honestly, her moveset looks really cool, but then you bring in a character like Korra, who's clearly using all 4 elements in her moveset, which makes sense to me, so I just don't really understand the decision so much. Korra's moveset, by the way, also looks really cool for the most part, but then you've got this move here, like, really out of 3 special moves for a character who's a martial arts master based on 4 elemental powers, and it's just kind of a charge forward. We've seen this so many times, I can't imagine there's not something a little more imaginative from the show you could work with. Now, I want to clarify, it's my job to be negative in this video. That's what you clicked on, that's what you're getting, but there are also plenty of moves and entire characters that I think honestly look really cool. CatDog, probably not a character that I'm personally going to be playing a whole lot. I don't usually go with these stance change kind of characters, but just conceptually, really interesting, unique design. I like it a lot. And overall, that honestly applies to a lot of the roster, but it's again kind of an area where I knew the game was going to be a little bit cheap to make. I knew it was going to have to cut some corners, but the thing that I did have higher hopes for was the creativity of the movesets that Audacity could bring to the table, and in a lot of instances, I'm just not really seeing it as much as I'd hope. What I do like a lot, though, to end this video on a more positive note, and one of the major reasons I'm so optimistic about it overall, are the universal mechanics. Everyone having light and heavy versions of all of their attacks, including dash attacks and aerials, that's really cool. I like seeing that. The game looks like it's going to be fairly combo-centric, and even though some of the combos are a little bit more samey between the roster members than I'd like, I still am very on board with that overall direction for the game. That's something I really think Ultimate is lacking. The high, mid, low thing that they've got going on here when attacks collide with each other, this kind of rock, paper, scissors game, I honestly don't know how much that's actually going to change things in the grand scheme of things. That'll be interesting to see if it becomes part of the meta, but it's certainly more interesting than just a straight up plank. Universal cargo throws, I love that. That is such a cool addition to the game. Air throws, too. Again, super cool. I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens with that. The defense system they've got going on looks interesting. I'm a little bit mixed on it. There's some elements of it that I think look super cool, some elements that I'm a little more on the fence about. The idea of infinite shield is good. I don't generally like Smash's shield depleting mechanic all that much. Most modern platform fighters have moved away from it. I think defensive options overall are so weak that it might become a little bit of a mashing game. I'm a bit worried about that, but it does have like a parry system in there, so that might help alleviate that quite a bit. Being able to hit back every projectile in the game like DDD's Gordo, yes. Yes, 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 absolutely 100% on board with this change. Not nearly as much as being able to pick them up and carry them around and throw them back at your opponent, though. That is just... That's so cool. Mobility in general seems pretty interesting, and I'm really curious to see what happens with the strafe system. That one is something I think people are going to take a while to sort of wrap their heads around all the way. Using downward air dash to replace fast fall, that one I'm honestly a little more on the fence about. We'll have to see on that one. And then you absolutely do not need to include wave dashing in a platform fighter in order to make it fun. 100% you do not need to do that, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't cool to see SpongeBob wave dashing. I do have some pretty significant concerns about the game. I think they're legitimate concerns, but my overall outlook on Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl is still pretty positive. Characters I'm initially interested in include Patrick, Korra, Nigel, and Danny Phantom, but if history is anything to go off of, I'll mess around with all of them for a while and then just settle into the sword character like I always do. Alright, that'll do it this time, and thanks for watching, everyone. Let me know your thoughts on All-Star Brawl. Generally speaking, I seriously am optimistic about it, but oh, I wish there were a few things that would fix. If you liked the video, please consider leaving a like. If you want more of me, you can follow me on Twitter at Mr. MockRock, Twitch at MockRock, Twitch one word, and I also have a Patreon. Patrons, YouTube members, and Twitch subscribers get stuff like early videos, access to my Discord server, content polls, and more. Check them out if you're interested, but that's it for me. Later, people! Purely from the sense of using it like a grab, it's a little underwhelming. The flip around effect doesn't have any true follow-ups. It doesn't do that much damage. The range is pretty good, but it doesn't have a whole lot else going for it. However, if you're even a little familiar with competitive Smash Ultimate, you probably already know that this is a good move. And this. And